Just boom, we can do that. I like to maintain that economic growth, providing community service obligations. I'm looking at the fiscal aspect of that. Basic education, free. It is viable, we can do that. It is a collective good governance effort.
Now that the elections are over, it's back to business as usual. Mind the play on words. Thanks for joining me on this special edition of Business PNG. There are quite a number of pressing issues that still need much clarification, like where is the government going to get that 500 million kina to make up the budget deficit? Or what's happening with the free education system? And how will this ninth parliament root out corruption? I talked to the Treasury Minister, Don Pole, to find out what Waigani plans to do in the coming years. Minister, welcome to the show. I believe this is your term as the Treasury Minister. So, what do you think about the split up between the Finance and Treasury Ministry?
Well, it's an interesting question. I see it in twofold answers. The first is politically the Prime Minister will have to do what it needs to do in order to maintain political equilibrium and solidarity and stability in politics.
Yep.
So what the Prime Minister had to split Treasury and Finance the way he did. But then the second component of my answer to that is that administratively you put Finance and Treasury together. It is more convenient to administer issues of Treasury as well as issues of Finance.
They go side by side, right?
They would go side by side administratively, but then politically the issues and the factors involved in making decisions are not always the same as those of administration. So I, as one of the strong supporters of the O'Neill-Dion coalition government, I accept and respect the decision of the Prime Minister in this regard.
Okay. So we hear that the government has come over 5 million in deficit.
Okay.
How can the government cover for the 500 million? I mean, sorry.
Yeah. Yes, I agree that we have a budget deficit of 513.1 million kina. So we will have a hole in the budget. And I've given the report to the Cabinet very recently, and I'm very thankful to the Cabinet being very supportive to assisting myself as Treasurer and also the Treasury Department to how to wind up that 513 million kina to ensure that we must have a balanced budget at the end of this year, as I forecasted when I ended down the budget late last year. So what is going to happen is we will make sure that we do not have that deficit by ensuring that we will cut on unnecessary expenditure, such as those that we believe are wasted, or especially in the recurrent budgets. We find the provincial governments, administrations, also in some national government departments and so forth, they are spending unnecessarily on areas that they should not spend. We'll look at those areas and cut back on spending on all those unproductive areas. At the same time, we will look at funds, not to spend and unspent funds lying within the system of governance, will all those back. And also, we have confidence in some of our state-owned entities. We believe they will have dividends that they can pay as per under the appropriations and also under the law to make up for this 510 million kina shortfall. So I'm pretty confident to winding up that shortfall by way of these measures.
So do you have any mechanisms as to how to monitor such initiative you're trying to come up?
Well, see, See, I like to make clear to the people of this country and to the private sector and to the public service as well. The 510 million kina deficit has been reflective of the fact that our commodity prices have gone down, and you will see the export revenue has been affected.
Yes, very much.
Second, also you realize that the appreciation of the kina against our major currency, the US dollar, has also affected our export earnings. So when you export, the appreciation has affected the revenue earning on those exports, especially copper and gold. So these deficits come about not because of unexpenditures mainly. It has come about because of our exchange rate against the US dollar being appreciated over the weeks, over the months, and also that you have a commodity prices, a downturn in the prices against the projected prices on our 2012 budget. So that's where the problems are.
Okay. So how will the government make good use of the current resource boom? Everyone is talking about the resource boom.
Well, government has already put in strategies that we are making use of the resource boom. One we have done is through very strict fiscal control of the budget. Okay. Second is promoting business in Papua New Guinea. For instance, in the transport sector, in the manufacture, in the retail sector, and also in the finance and services sector, there's been a growth in the GDP. So the business is already growing. We're also being very, very mindful that we have got an LNG project that is ongoing, and the government, you'll remember, we also put in some cost overrun funds of up to about 700 million kina on the LNG project to making sure that the project continues to deliver, and you've got business activities continue to take place in the economy, and that's what's happening at the moment. So there is a non-mining sector growth in the GDP. Employment has also grown in the non-mining sector. So we are seeing, with the kind of interventions the government has put in, you're seeing the private sector business activities are growing. You'll remember also in the budget we put in some monies for SMEs.
Yes, yes.
In the National Development Bank of some 130 million kina. We would like to grow the SME as well. We also, at least at the moment, relieving the parents of the school fees through the tuition fee-free education policy. So then the parents can have that bit of money to venture into businesses and small scale and informal and formal entrepreneurial activities whenever they can be able to do it. So we have done certain things within the budget to see to stimulate that growth that we have seen.
That was the Treasury Minister, Don Polier, talking about how business activities have affected the nation. After the break, we take a look at what the PNG LNG project has done to the country's employment figures. You're watching a special edition of Business PNG. In recent years, we have seen the face of business change. There is a lot more interest in the service industry and other non-mining sector development. Obviously, that would mean more jobs. The Treasury Minister commented on how this growth has affected our employment figures. So you mentioned about the growth in employment for the private sector. I believe this is more related to the LNG project in its construction phase. But there's a prediction that this might drop when the first export of gas in 2014 onwards. So, yeah. Do we have any strategies as the government as to how to try to keep the employment rate as it is?
Oh yes, that's a very important question. Just to give you and the viewers some idea about the employment in Papua New Guinea, the growth. In last year, 2011, we had a growth in the non-mining sector employment at 4.7%. At the moment, in the non-mining sector, it is growing at 6.4%. Okay, in the mining sector, last year we had a growth of 11.6%, and the current growth is 7.9% in the employment sector.
So it's growing.
It is growing. It's growing because of LNG project construction. It is at its highest peak at the moment.
Yes, yes.
And also in other sectors like in agriculture, tourism, in the financial industry, and the manufacture industry, retail, transportation. It's also growing. So what we are doing is, as part of the exercise to continuing to sustain that growth of a long-term period, which is very, very important for PNG. That GDP must grow, must be sustained. Therefore, you'll find the employment rate also be maintained or sustained and grow into the future. Okay, so what you'll see is the proceeds of the LNG project will be coming in 2014, and what we're doing is we'll have to hold back some of the government expenditure and activities from the government's budget, especially in 2013 and onwards. So you continue to allow the construction in the LNG continue. But at the moment, the GDP is growing at 9.9%, which is a upgrade from the focus in the 2012 budget of 7.8%.
7.8%, yeah.
So I like to maintain that economic growth, and also this employment growth, we like to sustain that. What we do is we've got to be very careful in expanding from the government, so you allow that LNG induced growth to continue, and 2013, 2014, when you see the construction pace of the LNG project once up, you then spend government funding quite aggressively to continue that growth as well as the employment. So that is the challenge we have, and I believe we have maintained that over the last 12 months. We're going to continue that in the next 12 to 24 months. So you sustain that growth in both economy, which will stimulate that employment. Also, to give another indication, we have had personal income tax in this year over and above the projected figure in the budget at around 50 million kina. 50 million kina. And also from the company income tax, we've got a real earnings of 70 million kina, and GST at 200 million kina or 270 million kina for this year. And
so what does this reflect?
That reflects that there is growth in employment. There is business activities taking place in the private sector and in the public sector. It also means that there is a GDP growth, not only in the mining sector, but also, like I've alluded to earlier, in the non-mining industries. So that is good. We'll have to maintain that. We'll have to be very, very responsible in our fiscal management of the budget. So we do not release so much money into the system, into the economy, all at once, because then you'll overheat the economy. Meaning at the moment you've got 9.9% economic growth, which is good. We should maintain that. You hold back government expenditure in some of those areas that you can be able to, and then you spend a lot in 2013 and 2014 when you've got your construction will kind of subside, and that will of course affect the GDP growth and the employment. So then you pump in more money into the economy, so you sustain all this growth in the sector. So that's how the government is going to address the GDP as well as the employment growth in Papua New Guinea.
So now we're talking about growth and business and the mining sector. So I believe with growth comes some challenges. So what are some impediments that?
It's true. You know, so there's always two sides to everything.
Yes, two sides to a coin.
Okay, now I have given you a report of the positive growth that we're seeing, the economy growing at 9.9%, the employment growing in both mining and the non-mining sectors, 6.4 and 7.9% respectively. However, that also is putting pressure on the economy in terms of inflationary pressures. What's happening is now our inflation is also rising at the same time because of the shortage of supply we have in skilled labor, available of land, free land or commercial land for doing business, the real estate industry, and of course other supply of materials and goods and services has come under a lot of pressure recently, and therefore our inflation rate is now at 8.5%. Very, very different to what we projected in the budget to be around 7.5%. That's been reflective of the growth in the economy. So you expect
all the principles of supply and demand at its best.
Exactly, that's right. That's why we've got to expand in PNG our supply base, so that we have to free up our land. I like to encourage incorporated landowner groups. I like to encourage also the people in the real estate industry, also the people in the service industries and in the manufacturing retail to be very mindful that we've got to control inflation by doing the business that is necessary to serve through those business ventures that our people and the business sector has in PNG. I like to let the ILGs or the incorporated landowner groups to commercialize their land, get the lands liberated for businesses. The government has a reform in the land sector that customary landowners to their incorporated groups and come out and commercialize their land by registering it through the process that the lands department has already established by government, and the land can be there. And also I like to urge those retailers who are also servicing our people to goods and services to also reflect the low cost of import that they are enjoying at the moment down to the consumer. So you also keep the prices of goods and services low. The appreciation of the kina has had an adverse effect on our export earnings, but on the import, our good people in the industries are paying less. That means that cost savings should also be reflected in the goods and other services that they're charging on our consumers. So it's something that I like the business and our people to be very mindful, so they work together with the government and we arrest some of these pressures in the inflation. But so inflation is an accompaniment to a very strong GDP growth, a strong employment growth, but it's also one that we can easily arrest and contain if we work together, making things cheaper by freeing up land, by upskilling our people, and that's what the government is doing. We've got a free education policy. We like every Papua New Guinean girl and boy to be educated, not just educated, but educated with real education for real life job and work in this country, so they are employed as soon as they leave school. So we've got to really diversify our education skills and expertise in all areas of sectors and of life in PNG. In every career, you've got Papua New Guineans there doing work. So there's a very, very strong supply of human capital, intellectual base, but you also have land there that you can build house and establish a business zone so that it kind of eases over a long time, also in the medium term and long term, the burden of inflation.
Don't go away. There's more to come after the break. Free education. Countless candidates said they were going to deliver this service to the people. With schools threatening to close down due to lack of funds, parents want to know if free education is really feasible. We asked Minister Polia just that.
A right that we must give to our people.
Yes. Do we have the capacity, the government, to really strongly enforce this?
Financially, we have demonstrated very strongly. The last O'Neill Nama government did that. Now the O'Neill Dion government will continue to drive this policy that we must have basic education free to our children of Papua New Guinea. We also need to look at the high schools, the secondary, and also the tertiary institutions. The tertiary institutions we have subsidized to 75% the tuition fees, and I would like to maintain that, but the budget is being prepared now as we speak, and I like to guide with the support of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet to making sure we maintain a free tuition fee policy for Papua New Guinean children, young men, women, and professionals who want to become professionals, because it's very important. You've got to give Papua New Guinean that right to that education they need. Yes. And from then, you'll see Papua New Guineans will develop those other various skills in their careers to assist and to participate in nation building. So it is viable. We can do that. We can do that. I'm saying viable because we are seeing in the medium term and in the long term, our growth will continue to remain moderate. Yes, in the medium term. We will see projects coming in from the LNG and other the extractive industry, mining projects as well, and also we're seeing strong growth in the other sectors. And we also, you will have learned that the government has established by law on the floor of Parliament, in the last Parliament, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is going to manage all its proceeds from the extractive industry and other areas to managing and continuing to support the free education policy. Correct. Yes. So I am confident we're going to be able to manage that. Okay, how I do the 2013 budget is one that I've got to be very careful because of the current scenario that I have described as part of the budgetary deficit that I'm expecting, or the government is expecting by the end of the year. However, we believe free education is a right to girls and boys in this country, to young men and women, and the government must deliver that. And I also believe, and I'm confident we've got the viability to sustain that program. So
where have we gone wrong? Like currently we hear some schools complaining.
Oh, no, this is not wrong. It's not because we run out of money. You recall, in I had two budgets that ended down last year. Yes. One was a supplementary budget in which we packed in 300 million kina
300 million, yes, for
free tuition fee for all schools throughout Papua New Guinea that we delivered. And the decision that we made in Cabinet, which I myself as Treasurer supported and I continue to support, is rather than putting the money through Education Department, it should go directly to all those individual schools.
Yes, yes.
So that means somewhere out there in Telefomin, or somewhere out there in Manus, you've got schools there who have that passbook account or school account with any bank. They will have that funds
pumped in,
put into, wired into the accounts directly from finance. That's what we did last year. and all have gone through, right? But only 56 million kin has not been wired to various schools as yet,
Yes.
of the 300 million. Why? Because those schools do not have an account with any bank, as well as that some of those schools, they have their names registered as schools with the education department, but there is no actual school on the ground.
Ghost schools.
Or if there's an actual school on the ground, the names are not registered with the Department of Education. So that's a report that was sent to Finance and Treasury towards the end of last year, and we acted on it immediately, and the funds have gone through, except for the 56 million. Once those information have been verified, the funds will be wired in the same manner. Now, the second part of the funds, totaling 302 million kina, that money was packed in the budget proper for 2012. And by end of May, the funds were already sent across in the form of warrants to the Education Department to, in a like manner, send those monies directly to the schools, to their accounts. To my disappointment, I think it's also very strongly expressed by the Prime Minister, Peter O'Neill, and I think a view that is expressed by Cabinet and other members of Parliament.
Even the Chief Secretary.
I think even the Chief Secretary has echoed the same concerns. The funds have not gone out. So I think the Education Minister and the Education Secretary and his department will have a lot of work to do there. And my advice is that let's do it quickly. The funds are there. It is not a matter of funds not being there. The funds have been budgeted for, 302 million. They are there, and there's no reason why the funds should not be wired into those various schools immediately. See, what I wanted to do at that time as treasurer was that, and with the support of the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister then, was to make sure that funds do not get delayed through this very long process through the Education Department. That's why we wanted to send the funds directly to the schools. That's what we have done. And that's a system we've established, and we'll continue to do that.
When we return, the Minister elaborates further on the government's free education policy. If you've just joined us, we are speaking with the Treasury Minister about the government's plans. According to a report, PNG was noted as the world's 7th fastest growing economy in 2011. We were just behind China. The current government wants to make use of this growth, and they are starting with education. Now, we are touching on the base of implementation, as we say about the school fee.
Yeah, that's it.
So I believe this goes right across the board.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
As the Treasury Minister, do you have any plans to implement such programs efficiently?
Well, that has been a continuing challenge to government. It continues to remain a challenge. We have seen some improvement when the last government, in O'Neill Nama government, came into office, when we did some structural improvements, like I have just alluded to, in sending educational funds direct to the school accounts. We like to maintain that. Whatever funds that must go to school, we like to have those funds go directly to the schools, to the accounts, and that means the board of the school, the school management under the leadership of the principal or the headmaster, they will be responsible to making sure that the funds are used for the right purposes. The other thing that I like to look at also, which I have also mentioned there to the Prime Minister and other colleague ministers of cabinet and members of parliament, is that we'll have to rationalize functions of government departments and agencies to improve on the efficiency of implementation. For instance, see, for some reason, over the years, government funds have been parked in education or in health for development or for infrastructure purposes. Education, so the education department would build a new school or a classroom. Funds have been parked under the National Health Department to build an hospital or an aid post. And that's the culture we have seen over the past. Now, the problem with that has been this. These two departments, for instance, I also mean for other departments as well, these two departments do not have the technical expertise. They're not trained in the first place to build. Well, how this come about was some decision in the past that I do not wish to labor too much on that. But see, these departments, their sole responsibility, their expertise are in completely different areas to servicing our people, to education or to health. The education department, its job is to make sure there's academia, environment of academia. There is quality education. There is the facilities for education. Those things are there in the classroom. The computers are there. The teaching and imparting knowledge to Papua New Guinean young men, women, or children with contemporary knowledge, applying contemporary technology. That's their job. They were never meant to go and build classrooms. They're never meant to meddle with funds for such development purpose with the CSTB or with other boards for that matter. Same thing with the health department. Their sole responsibility is the medicine. Nothing but a medicine. Their job is to making sure that the medicine reaches the rural aid post. That mother who is dying over there in the bush. That young child that needs that very service. That must be the focus of their existence. But what has happened is, now health is talking about building this hospital. They want the money to build this. They want the money to build that aid post and so forth. So what we have done is we have seen a culture of changing or diluting the fundamental reason for their establishment to one that is not their responsibility. So you've diverted attention away to building all these things, which is not their culture, which is not their job. So now what you've seen is the departments now building up the technical divisions, trying to hire engineers, builders, architects, going to the boards to approve contracts and so forth. That I think has caused a lot of problems in the actual delivery of medicine and delivery of quality education to our people. So what I think must happen now, which I have I've instructed my department to look at it very closely, and I'll to reflect it in the coming budget, is anything to do with development, to deal with infrastructure, must be parked with the appropriate department, and that's the Department of Education. So Department of Works, rather. Department of Works is the department that is responsible for building classrooms, building hospitals, maintaining them, repairing them, for roads, for water, for all those things. The Department of Works, they've got a sole responsibility. So we're going to capacity the Department of Works to implement. We're going to make sure the works as their offices and their plant and equipment at the districts throughout Papua New Guinea. The classrooms are built there. The head posts are built there. Of course, under the policies put, the policy framework put out by the health department and the education department, the Department of Works works with them, but to put out those services in infrastructure development. So these are some of those things we've got to look at, realigning the functions to those responsible agents. The other one is national planning. National planning yes. Should not be a department of raising checks. It's not their job. Planning is got to be responsible for planning and planning and planning, then implementing that planning, executing that strategy, and they have this very important duty of ensuring that that particular plan or that program is correctly, effectively implemented, and they achieve the intended objectives and meeting those milestones in the construction or the development phase, and then make corrections where necessary. At the moment, that's not being done effectively.
No.
What is done is national planning has been cultured wrongly in the past also to look at raising funds, raising checks, and giving out individual projects, and coming down to micromanagement of things, which is supposed to be left to the implementation agents of government. So we have to look at it very seriously. The other area that I'm also looking at is, at the moment, I like to have a very strong, powerful think tank, a board or a group that must work closely with the Prime Minister of the country. The Prime Minister works with the Treasurer, the National Planning Minister, the Finance Minister, and the other economic ministers and other ministers as well, to continually, on a day-to-day basis, keeping their hands on the progress of the economy.
Yes, yes. Very important.
They will have the job of thinking for government, looking ahead to oncoming challenges, like at the moment we're experiencing the implications of the Eurozone financial crisis. Not so long in the past, we also experienced the detrimental effects of the Wall Street financial meltdown. Okay, so and also now at the moment we are seeing China is seeing a bit of a recession in their growth and activities there. And you never know. Something can happen next door to our other economies within the region. We've got to have a team empowered to observe and assess and advise and guide the government, the Prime Minister, the Treasurer, the economy of this country as to how do we mitigate through those challenges proactively, not responding to or reacting to crisis, but proactively steering Papua New Guinea out of those challenges that we see forthcoming. It's like, to give an illustration, it's like placing a team of experts in the control room of a power plant, and they are always keeping the eyes on the board to all the switches and see where's the red light. And that means there's a pylon or there's a power line that's been affected somehow, and it tells exactly where it is, and or where's the orange light before it turns into the red.
So this group of people will be
they'll be there. So these people are there all the time in the plant monitoring. We like to see a board or some government think tank team may comprise of people from all around the world, led by our Papua New Guinean very strong professional economists and researchers, to say, look, that's where it's going to go wrong if you don't take this message. It should not be political. It should be a relative of highly empowered, professional and expert people, seasoned as well as young and creative and innovative. And they will then look at in a more collective view as to how Papua New Guinea is doing economically and guide it out or guide where it should be focusing. At the moment, there's nobody assessing if we have achieved the programs and our visions as per the Vision 2050 or the National Development Plan or the Medium-Term Development Strategy. As a treasurer, I'm looking at the fiscal aspect of that. The fiscal strategy under the Fiscal Responsibility Act is the one that I'm administering, to making sure we're within the framework of the budget. If something goes out of control or something that is beyond our control, like we're experiencing now, the commodity prices have plummeted down, and also the appreciation of the kina, and so forth, then it's my duty to do what I must do, like I've started to do, to correct or to we wind up this 530 million kina. But on the overall economy, we've got to have the team to guide government to making sure there is growth in the business sector. There's also growth in investment from abroad, investment also domestically, and also growth in the entrepreneurial activities. How many Papua New Guineans are millionaires? How many young people are millionaires? You see, I'm interested in the women and the youth to become millionaires in this country. We've got the resources. like you said, there's a boom, we can do that. But we have to have the statistics. I want to know how many young people are venturing into business. I want to have a list of them. How many women in Papua New Guinea, they're doing business. I want to have a list of them. And the government must say, these are the numbers. We like to grow that. Next year, we like to grow by 5 or by 10. Or the following year, we like to see these numbers grow. We've got to grow the private sector owned by Papua New Guineans. But to do that, you've got to have that coordinating, that very strong team there. At the moment, from my observations, every government institutions, every government agent responsible for growing the country's economy, they are not working together. And my job as treasurer is I'll be addressing this issue the next 5 years with the support of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, with the government. I will guide the government into making sure we've got an economic coordination, integrated assessment, integrated push forward for Papua New Guinea's national greatness. So that's the other thing I'm going to do.
More of that interview after the break. Good to have you with us. The Parliament is really looking at using this economic growth to benefit the country. They want to expand the budget to look after the people. Here is the Minister to explain further.
And the other is to making sure that the state-owned enterprise, through the state-owned minister and through the support of the Prime Minister, we've got to improve the performance of the state SOEs. It's very important. We cannot talk of an economy or business if these SOEs are not fixed or not growing themselves. What is the best strategy forward? That's the other thing from Treasury's perspective. I will be pressing to see a major improvement in the management, in the operations, and in the growth of this sector. We've got to make some very critical decisions. I would also like to work with the development partners, like the ADB, World Bank, like OSAI, Australian government, New Zealand, IFC, International Finance Corporation, a subsidiary of the World Bank group of companies, the USA, and China, India, Malaysia, all these countries, and then the Pacific, MSG, all those countries that are working with PNG, interacting economy to economy, they're very, very important for Papua New Guinea's economic growth. Yes, yes. So one very important aspect of my function, I see, is to engage in discussions on a day-to-day, on a week-to-week basis as to how can Papua New Guinea come into interaction with all those very important development partners and bilaterals and other economies to fuel the growth of Papua New Guinea economy, because the world is not big anymore. A country is not on its own anymore. We have all the economies now integrated into one solid economy of the region or a group of countries, and Papua New Guinea has got to just play the game. So I'll work with the government, the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Commerce and Trade Industry Minister. I'll also work with National Planning, the Finance Ministers, and the Forest Minister, and others, Mining Minister, Petroleum and Energy Minister, to making sure, and of course with other ministers and service ministers as well. Education and health are very, very important. But the areas that we have to grow the economy to make the business grow. Therefore, you expand your budget, you've got enough money to look after people. Those are very important areas. And
so in this time and era, we'll need to coordination.
Coordination to work. So these are the things that I'm looking at. And look, let me tell you this. I like to from a treasurer's perspective, do things completely different to what we have done before. I like to see a completely different approach to Papua New Guinea's economic development process. I would like to also change the culture of treasury. I like my department to be capacitated, to be cultured in the right manner, so the right advice available to the Prime Minister and the government. I also like to lift the profile of professionalism, in all the areas that I'm responsible for, and I think the same should happen for the whole country. And I like to make the GDP sustained throughout the medium term and long term. I like to keep the employment up. I like to see the families of PNG earn an income through the pockets through SME activities in the country. I like to also look at some major intervention to redesigning and reconstructing the Highlands Highway, and the Port Moresby Port needs to be addressed, and the Jackson's Airport also needs to be addressed, and other important assets of the country will have to be addressed in a very strategic manner. And I will be working with the Prime Minister, the Cabinet Ministers, and the Parliament, as well as development partners and the private sector and business to achieve those for PNG. And we all can work together.
Don't go away. We have more on Mr. Polye's interview after the break. The extractive industry, a term that applies to the mining and petroleum industry, has played a major role in the economy. It contributes to 1/3 of the country's annual budget. Well, how can the government make PNG a more investor-friendly place to make business? Earlier on, we've been talking about the extractive industry. I believe NRI has come up with this suggestion as to how to keep the extractive industry transparent. So, how does the government take this on?
Well, before I answer the question, I'd like to first of all thank the operators of the extractive industry in the mining sector, in the oil, in the gas sectors for contributing meaningfully to Papua New Guinea's development progress. And I'd like to thank all the companies that are operating in Papua New Guinea, foreign investments, as well as landowner groups and other domestic participants in the sector. I also would like to acknowledge that whilst the bigger companies are doing their biggest share, there are some smaller mining companies in Papua New Guinea that are also contributing in very important ways. For instance, where there is no health services or education services, or there's no government service in some of the very remotest part of Papua New Guinea. They have gone in and done some work as part of the community service obligation services, and I'd like to thank the smaller miners, companies that have done that. I'd like to thank you for that. I also thank the bigger companies in Papua New Guinea also participating with the government, not only to grow the economy and look at the profitability of the operations, but also in terms of providing community service obligations in partnership to government in the country. I'd like to salute them. The question as to the transparency of the proceeds and the operations in the sector is a very important one, close to the heart of the government. In fact, that is not just the Papua New Guinea initiative. It is an initiative taken by Transparency International. There's also initiative taken at various conventions within grouping countries, within the region, as well as in a broader perspective all around the globe. And it's a very important initiative that Papua New Guinea, as a resource country, we must play an important role in making sure that our resource proceeds and the operations of operating on those projects and programs are transparent as much as possible. That is not to say or not to accuse anyone that there's not been that, but this is part of a good governance measure by the O'Neill-Dion government. In fact, you will have heard and have noticed many times the Prime Minister O'Neill has been talking about fighting corruption. He's been talking about establishing the ICAC, and also the Deputy Prime Minister Leo Dion has also been an advocate and has been conducting himself to fighting corruption as well. And you'll find you've got this team of government, ministers and parliament, most of them are new, and they're very keen to attacking corruption, and also at the same time really aggressively driving good governance, making sure there's accountability, and of course, like we say, there's much transparency. And Papua New Guinea is a country that, at its economy, even at the current times, based on the extractive industry. How much profit we're getting is very, very important. Must be accountable by the people, because we're the government elected by the people. In the same token, the operators who work here are also responsible to the government, because the government is acting for the people, and also they're responsible to their own shareholders, the board too. You know, the shareholder wants to know what's happening in the industry, in this country. So it's a collective good governance effort at the international scale to making sure that every resource country is aligned to driving that policy, but also achieving the tangible objective of making sure there's transparency in the extractive industry. And I would like to mention here that the O'Neill Dion government is serious about this. The treasury is part of my responsibility on the fiscal side, as well as on the proceeds that come to IRC, as well as making sure there's growth in business and so forth. I like to also ensure there's good governance. I would like to also ensure there's good a sense of responsibility and transparency in all those work that we do in the private sector, but also in the public sector, because all of us are interacting together. If there's lack of good governance or transparency in the public sector, for instance, the mining department or the National Resource Authority, then it's very difficult to ensuring the same or the transparency is there in the industry. We've got to take the first lead. The government agents will need to take the first lead. If there's conflict of interest at the National Resource Authority, at the mine department, we've got to clear those out. Okay? And we've got to take the lead to show that, look, we are transparent. That's how we're doing. And the industry also, respective, they also got a duty to be very transparent as much as possible in their operations, in their business, the conduct of activities in this country. They have the obligation to Papua New Guinea, but also to the world economy, world business. So we are serious about that, and we are addressing those issues. And just recently, the cabinet has approved, under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister, the task force working together to establishing these anti-corruption bodies and systems in place to making sure that there is good governance and transparency, there is prudence in management of public resources and so forth.
Well, Minister, we congratulate you on your portfolio as the Treasury Minister, and thank you for coming on show. We wish you all the best with the implementation of service delivery and the setup of this economic task force, which we believe is very important in this time and era where we have an economic boom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just before I finish, I'd like to make this last comment that I am a very keen driver of SMEs, small, medium enterprises. I'm very keen in seeing an emerging of a middle-class economy in Papua New Guinea. I'm very keen in seeing there is money and resource in the pockets of the father, mother, the son, and the daughter. I'm very keen to see the Papua New Guinean skill and expertise to develop. And we like to work very hard on those areas from the Treasury Department. Even when we put the budget down, I believe that we'll address those areas, because to grow a sound and sustainable economy, you'll have to have Papua New Guinean human beings properly skilled for real life's job, but also they must have the resource in the pocket that they must earn through hard work. No easy gain, must through hard work. We've got to do those things, and we're working very hard to making sure we realize those very important objectives. And also a very important part of that is that our people must be educated financially. We do not have the financial mindset. Papua New Guinea, most of our people in the rural areas, and these people that even those of us educated and those of us in high jobs like CEOs and secretaries, we don't make a good the financial knowledge that is available to us, or most of our people have not been trained with financial skills. That's one thing that I like to drive. With those people already doing that job in the field, I like to thank the central bank and its governor for doing that. I like to thank the IFC, the World Bank. I like to thank OSAID. I like to thank all the commercial bank of Papua New Guinea and other businesses that are skilling Papua New Guinean young men, women, and men to having that very basic important knowledge of finance is very important. I encourage you to do that because your profitability depends on that Papua New Guinean citizen earning that money and saving it in a bank and you seeing the economy grow. All of us are responsible for that. And whilst we try to grow SMEs in Papua New Guinea and business in Papua New Guinea and to encourage investment growth here, we like to very, very importantly also develop the financial expertise, the basic skills of budgets and saving culture. And that's right, those for Papua New Guinean people. And that's where you'll find I as the treasurer in O'Neill Dion government will be driving with the people. And I'll meet and interact with people to just making sure Papua New Guinea becomes that very financially prudent, sound economy, so we've got a sustainable economy. Thank you.
That has been our special edition of Business PNG. You can watch this interview again online at www.mtv.com.pg and go to our Business PNG page. And if you have any comments or suggestions, do send them through to the address now shown on your screen. Until the next time, I'm Festus Maiganap. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.